Hello fans, Film Recaps here. Today we are going to cover a 2017 sci-fi thriller movie named Time Trap. The movie starts with a man, named Hopper, finding an abandoned van and looking through its windshield. He also has a dog with him. He opens up the van's side door and looks through some of the things. He then leaves the van and finds a hole in the ground nearby. He sits down on the ground to look into it. He then calls his dog, named Boss, to come near, but the dog is afraid. Hopper stands up and his eyes fall upon a hill nearby. That hill has a cave. He decides to go check it out. He turns on his flashlight to look inside the cave. Hopper finds a man with a gun strapped to his belt, standing still. He decides to leave. On his way back, he calls someone named Jackie and tells her about the hippie van he had found, that there was no sign of hippies. He asks her to put together a climbing pack for him as he wants to go into the cave. He returns to his home and finds two people waiting in his doorway. He opens the door and Boss runs towards Jackie. The boy named Taylor asks to go on the expedition with him. Hopper is their professor and he refuses to let anyone come with him. He takes the expedition bag and goes inside his house. Next, we see Hopper near the cave, knotting a rope and throwing it inside the hole in the ground. Then he climbs up the hill to the cave, but Boss stays behind. He enters the cave and notices a wall and moisture inside. 2 days later, we see Taylor knocking up on Jackie's door. They are planning on going to look for Hopper. As they don't have a Jeep, Jackie suggests he should loan it from her girlfriend Kara. She calls Kara from his phone and hands it to him. He asks Kara about the Jeep. She was planning on going on some other adventure with her half-sister Vives for a school project. But she chooses to go with Taylor instead and take Vives with her. Next, we see Vives making a video on her phone explaining her school project. She then comes out of the house. Her father is giving Kara a lesson on how to drive a Jeep. Later, in the car, Vives is rolling her camera to make a presentation for her class. They also have to pick up Vives' friend, Furby, from his house. They pick him from his house and get on their way to the cave. On their way, Furby hands each of them a camera to document the trip. They come across the hippie van and search it. Taylor and Jackie find pictures of Hopper's dad. They figure out that Hopper has been searching for his parents all along, who went missing, trying to find the Fountain of Youth. Furby trips over a rope. They all follow the rope and it leads them into a cave. They decide to check it out. Furby is afraid of the spiders in the cave. Jackie goes ahead and follows the rope. She crawls from a narrow space and finds the rope going down a cliff. But the rope has been severed. They come back to the car and pack some things. They leave Furby behind and give him a radio. They start to rappel down the cliff. Kara notices the dampness and a change in air pressure while coming down. Then, we see Hopper experiencing the same dampness and changes in the air. As soon as he crosses the wall of thin air, a light starts to flash behind him. He chooses to come out of the cave to find out the reason. Once he gets out, he is shocked to see that it's night outside. He calls his dog, but he's nowhere to be found. He returns to his car and it is covered in thick branches and plants have grown all around it. He tries to start the engine but the car doesn't work. He finds another Jeep around. It is also covered in branches. Hopper is looking for jumper cables to jump-start his own vehicle. He searches the other Jeep and finds the bag. He starts to search for Jackie instead. He finds a cave entrance nearby. He goes inside and starts throwing glow sticks behind him to find his way back. As he is about to cross the invisible wall, he throws a glow stick and it appears to have stopped midair. But just as he moves forward, the stick falls on the ground and the light at the entrance also starts flickering. Next, we see the group led by Jackie and Taylor, gathered down at the cliff. They start to explore the cave and hear some disturbing noises and screams coming from a distance. The girls get scared and decide to leave the cave at once. Jackie starts to climb up the rope. She only goes up a few steps when the rope suddenly cuts loose and she falls down on Taylor. She hurts her leg and Taylor's hand gets damaged. Taylor gets up and pulls the second rope and finds out that it's also been severed. He thinks that Furby is messing around and has cut down the ropes. He tries to call Furby with the help of the radio. Somebody responds in a distorted voice asking for help. Upon asking, the person on the radio replies to Furby. Instead of sitting around there, they decide to go search the cave for Professor Hopper. Jackie stays behind as she can't walk because of her injury. The group goes to the other room of the cave and finds an opening surface. There is a flickering light coming from there. Kara gets on the rock to look for the way out. She also finds a rope that was cut off in the middle. She looks down on the other side of the rock and freaks out. She sends Vives to the other room and starts crying. Jackie has also started to crawl and follow them here. So, they all get together into the room again. Taylor comes around to look behind the rock as well. He also gets shocked. Vives and Jackie use a camera stick and watch what's behind the rock. They find a lifeless body of Furby down on the ground with his neck broken. Taylor grabs his bag and the camera is still rolling. They check the video to figure out what happened. On his vlog, Furby talks about how long they have been down there. He documents about the days he had spent without the group and about Hopper's car. He studies the journals of Hopper, and when nobody returns for a few days, he decides to go check out the cave himself. He goes down the rope that Hopper had tied earlier and starts going down with the camera still rolling. On his way down, he looks at the sky and it starts to move so fast outside. After a moment, his rope gets cut down and he falls onto the ground. Vives check the timestamp on the video and Furby has actually spent days on the surface. After a little debate, Kara decides to climb the walls and get to the surface to look for help. As she is about to go, Vives puts a camera on her and Taylor gives her an SOS beacon to call for help outside. Taylor thinks that the flickering light outside is the sun's movement and days are passing by every moment. Kara climbs up the hole and gets to the surface. When she reaches the surface, she is surprised to see that the place has turned into a wasteland. There is nothing for miles. She tries to activate the beacon but can't get a signal. She sees a huge sandstorm coming and spots a triangle spaceship in the sky. She rushes back into the cave and tries to explain to the group what she saw. Nobody believes her until they watch the tape of her camera. Then they compare the tape to Taylor's recorder and it has only been a few seconds in here while Kara has spent half an hour outside. Jackie figures out that this cave is the fountain of youth as time stops here. Taylor grabs Furby's rope and they decide to send Kara again with rope to help them get out as well. They re-watch Furby's tape and find out that he was alive after he fell and somebody else broke his neck afterward. Taylor grabs a few rocks and hands them to everybody for defense. Meanwhile, Kara climbs up the rocky wall and Vives is watching the video again. She figures out that each flicker outside isn't a day but an entire year. Kara freaks out. Suddenly, a long big pole drops down the hole into the cave. It is some future technology that works as a ladder. Kara grabs the ladder and starts climbing upwards. But there's a man coming downwards, so she gets back down instead. The group is terrified to see a giant man in a suit getting on the ground. Suddenly, a caveman comes and jumps on the shoulders of the giant man. He pulls him down and uses a futuristic tech to pin him to the ground. The group gets scared and runs. They come across a room where somebody has lit a fire and there are two bodies on the ground. Jackie recognizes them as Hopper's parents. They look around and see three cavemen gathered around another body. They quietly try to escape but the cavemen notice them and start to follow. The girls run and hide in another room while Taylor stays to fight. After a little brawl, they knock Taylor out and smash his head with a rock. Kara goes back to check on Taylor and finds him dead. She starts crying when the giant man in a suit appears again. He passes by them and goes to a pool nearby and fills up a flask. He is about to leave when he comes back and grabs Taylor's body and starts to drag it into the pool. Kara fights him but he manages to stop her. After a moment, a caveman enters the room again, holding a torch in his hand. The giant man punches the caveman and he falls to the ground. Taylor wakes up from the dead and Kara holds him while he breathes. Suddenly, two more cavemen appear. They start to fight the man from the future. They grab him and take off his helmet. His face is a bit different from humans. Kara helps him and he manages to pin down all the cavemen but is unable to breathe the air. They give him his helmet but he checks the device on his arm and he is out of time. After the situation is settled, Kara calls Vives from the other room. The man releases gas from the collars which put the cavemen to sleep. He then plays the footage of the news of their disappearance from a holographic device on his arm. As he takes his last breaths, he shows them a video that explains the plans for humans to make life possible on other planets. As they accept the reality that everything and everyone they knew is gone now, Jackie notices Hopper's backpack around the room. Taylor picks up the cowboy's gun to go search for Hopper and asks them to get Furby in the pool. Taylor goes down another tunnel and finds some other cavemen using the water to recover from their wounds. He finds Hopper crawling on the floor with an injury on his back. There is another layer of time wall separating them from going deeper into the cave. We then see Hopper's little sister stuck in the second layer of the time trap. Taylor wants to go save her but Hopper stops him as he will get stuck there. In the other layer, we can see a war going on between some people who are stuck in time. Taylor tries to get Hopper to the pool but he refuses. Taylor hands him the revolver and gets to fetch the water for him. Taylor goes back to the pool and puts Furby into the water. Meanwhile, the cavemen near Hopper are getting healed and they attack him. Vives throws some fuel on one entrance. There are gunshot echoes in the cave as Hopper tries to shoot the cave dwellers. Vives lights up a fire to block the entrance and Taylor grabs the ladder stick and they go for the surface. They open the ladder and start to climb upwards. As Kara is about to reach the surface, she notices that the surface is covered with water now. She puts her hand into the water and some hands grab her and pull her into the water. Meanwhile, one of the cavemen grabs the ladder. All of them start to fall down. Suddenly a man puts an oxygen mask on Kara for her to breathe. We see Kara going up from a tunnel in the water as the time stops down in the cave with everybody falling midair. After a moment, A few long metallic chains appear out of the water and hold Taylor, Vives, and Jackie. Kara comes out of the water in a futuristic costume and advises them to come with her to the other side. She pulls them all through the water. After all of them are passed through, a few more chains appear to grab Furby, Hopper, and his parents. The movie ends with a scene of Furby and Hopper waking up in a pool of water. Jackie, Kara, and Taylor greet them. Alongside their tub of water, we see Hopper's missing parents and his sister. They have been rescued by the future human race floating in space, and the movie ends here. Thanks for watching, guys.